Hi, welcome. So we are going to do a lot of review this week and one set of notes. Our one set of notes is going to be Law of Cosines, which is a little bit tricky. We're only going to do like four to six examples maybe, but a lot of review in class and our tests this week. So make sure you come and ask questions and you have a calculator handy. Remember in Alex, there's a calculator available to you there as well for the homework. So our formula is going to start out pretty similar to Pythagorean theorem, but it's not a right triangle. We have law of cosines, and we're going to use it when we don't have a right triangle. So a squared is going to equal b squared plus c squared minus 2 times b times c times cosine of angle A. So I'm just going to highlight this so you see that whatever the angle is that you have or the side that you're looking for, those are the two pieces that go on the ends. This one's a little bit trickier than law of cosines, but the nice thing is that you only use law of cosines once, and then you can use law of sines because you would have enough information. So the nice thing about this is that it works no matter what the letter is. And I'm just going to highlight it so you can see and just really pay attention to that. So our other two ways that we could write the formula, depending on what side we have, is going to be if we have b squared, then we would have a squared plus c squared minus 2, again that's ac now, times cosine of angle B. And then the last one would be c squared equals, now it's a and b squared minus 2ab times cosine of c. Remember that the angles are all your capital letters, capital A, capital B, capital C. Across from angle A is lowercase a, so that's your side A. Across from angle B is side B. Across from angle C is side C. The sides are represented by the lowercase letters, and the angles are represented by the uppercase letters. So we're going to do our first one right here. And again, you always want to look for, if you have an angle, what's across from it or opposite. That is the key part of your setup. So you're going to start with the side over here. You're going to start with x squared equals 7 squared plus 12 squared minus 2 times 7 times 12 times cosine of your angle, which is 65 degrees. Okay, so it's a little bit of work here. Remember that this is being multiplied, so when you do this work in your calculator, this all needs to stay together first. You can't do this and then subtract this part and then multiply by cosine. You've got to do all of this back here first and subtract it from the first part. So I'm going to go ahead and work this out. 7 squared plus 12 squared. So again, 7 squared we should know is 49. 12 squared is 144. 7 and 12 times 2, I get negative 168 here, times cosine of 65. Now again, you cannot just subtract that. We're going to do 49 plus 144, we get 193, minus 168 times cosine of 65. Again, it becomes really, really tricky. You want to do that. You have to keep this part together. Okay, this is x squared equals this. So x is really going to equal the square root of 193. Now what is 168 cosine of 65 is going to be negative. I get negative 71 approximately. So 193 minus 71, you get 122. Square root of 122, which is approximately 11. So it's a little bit tricky. See if you get those when you plug that in your calculator. This is, the nice thing about it is that it's just a setup you have to use, and then being able to calculate that in the calculator. So practice, practice, practice. So here we're going to set this one up. Again, that's what you want to focus on. So pause and see if you can set this up first. X squared equals 25 and 20. 25 squared plus 20 squared minus 2 times 25 times 20 times cosine of my angle, 108 degrees. Now remember that all of this has to stay together, so I'm just going to kind of put that bracket around it so you remember you have to calculate that first before you subtract. Doing this a little bit at a time, 25 squared is 625. 20 squared is 400. 25 times 20, I get minus 1,000 cosine 108. 625 plus 400. It's going to be the square root of 1025 minus 1,000 cosine 108. Remember, this is what has to stay together right here. So 1,000 cosine 108. I actually get a negative, so negative negative makes this plus about 309. So 1025 plus 309, I get 1334, which now is approximately 36.5. So be very careful when you plug in your positives and negatives. This one ended up staying negative. This one ended up with a negative and a negative becoming positive. So you've got to watch your signs and be really careful. A lot of us will lose that. Let's do one more of these ones. This is the nicer way of the setup. So we're going to do x across from 34. Okay, I'm going to pause and set it up, so come back in a minute. Make sure you pause and set yours up on your own first. Okay, so here, I haven't finished it yet, but here is my work to this point. Squaring those, adding them together, minus. I'm going to go ahead and do minus cosine 34, and I get negative 366 about. Is that right? So again, this piece right here is what I get right here. Okay, we're going to have to square root these when we simplify. So 458 minus 366, I get about 92. Square root of 92, which is approximately 9.6. So there we go. Now again, with law of sines, law of cosines, there was a, depending on what side you're missing. If you're missing the side, that's where your variable is. If I have to go the other way, we're going to do those from the other side of the notes. So go ahead and flip to the second page. And here we are going to have to go backwards. We're going to have to find the angle measures. So still the same type of setup. You are still looking at the angle and what's across. And we're going to set it up the same way. Now I know the side, so I'm going to put 7 squared here equals 12 squared plus 11 squared minus 2 times 12 times 11. That's messy, sorry about that. Times cosine of x is my missing angle, so I'm looking for x. I'm going to pause and do some of the calculations real quick, and I'll be back so you do it. Okay, so I get about here, and remember that in the orange, that piece is separate, so I can't really move that immediately. I'm going to subtract both sides from 265 from both sides. And I end up with a negative, which is a little bit ugly, but I do end up with negative 216 over here equals negative 264 cosine of x over here. So what's nice at this point is that this is multiplication, so it goes together, but if I want to get the x by itself, I can go ahead and divide both sides by negative 264. So a negative divided by negative is going to give me a positive. So I get negative 216 divided by negative 264. I end up with, I'm going to write this, I'm going to flip it around. So I'm going to put the cosine x on this side. Cosine x equals approximately, you round to 4 decimal places, I'm going to put 8182. 8182. Now remember, every time we're looking for an actual angle, this is where we say angle x equals inverse cosine of that number. So 0.8182. So if I'm going to do second cosine, 0.8182, I end up with about 35 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and say this is about, I'll go ahead and highlight the answer. So that's what we got. So let's only do this for one more. We're going to do this for number 6, set it up, come back, see if it's correct. So my angle and my side that I'm looking for, my side first, 35 squared, equals 24 squared plus 16 squared, minus 2 times 24 times 16 times cosine of x. Okay, so again, I'm going to pause while I do some of the quick calculations until I get to that more tricky part. So once I do the squaring and combining like terms here, I'm going to subtract 832. I end up with 393, what is that? 1225 minus 832. We end up with 393 here. Equals negative 768 cosine of x, and now you want to divide by negative 768. So when I divide by negative 768, I end up with negative 0.5117 equals cosine of x. So remember, when I end up there, angle x is going to equal the inverse cosine of that number, negative 5117, negative 0.5117. So inverse cosine, negative 0.5117, and we get approximately 120 degrees. 120.8 actually, if you're going to 1 decimal. So those, it gets ugly a little bit, but I want to know that you can do the setup. If you can kind of do that setup, the work is ugly. You're not going to have a lot of these problems, maybe one or two. And it's not something you're going to see a lot of in geometry. You're going to see more of that later on in Algebra 2, but it's something you want to touch on because it talks about our triangles. So, good luck. Come to office hours, come to class if you have any questions, and I will see you next time. Have a fabulous day.